Hey everybody, welcome to Matwork Monday. This week is a little more educational than movement-based. I decided after, honestly, some feedback from my husband, as well as students kind of over the years of teaching, like hearing a cue time and time again, and then one day just being like, now I know what you mean, and I'm like, I wish I had explained that a little more thoroughly at the beginning. But by the nature of mat classes, where there's someone new, maybe every week coming in, or a bunch of people that have been to class time and time again, it's tough to explain every week what all the cues mean. And I use a lot of cues for the sheer purpose that not every cue works for every body. At the same time, there's some staples in the format, and I'd like to explain a little more about what those look like and what I actually am hoping your body can do with those cues so that we all start to speak that same language of how I teach, and therefore can be a little more succinct in the cues that I do use in time so that they're more effective. And then there's less talking from me and a little more movement in your body because you know what a simple cue or two means. So today's progression will be kind of a lot of the cues I use. We'll go through what they look like in the body, and then at the end of today's mat work, we will succinctly put all of those cues into three major, more advanced cues that get like 5 things to happen in your body at once, which again becomes more efficient, right? You don't have to hear 18 cues to do one exercise, and it helps the brain free up a little bit. It's a nice place to get once you start to understand your body more. What did I want to say? Okay, so I made notes today, by the way, because I wanted to be a little more organized for you and myself. I get excited when I teach and I get off topic sometimes. So it's designed for new students or those of you who have been coming forever to watch, because those of you who are new will have a little more insight into the language I use when I teach. And those of you who have been working with me forever might actually understand what I've been saying this whole time for the first time today, because I'm going to go through kind of thoroughly what each cue means. Also to be used as a resource. Don't think you have to memorize or know all of these cues. It's just over time you can always go back and be like, what did she mean again by shrink wrap or lift out of her pelvis? What does that even mean? You can always come back to this and then say, now I know. Oh, little lift, out of the pelvis, which can be cued a bunch of different ways, but lift out of the pelvis is usually one that gets you there. So there you go. It's a resource. This today won't necessarily be a workout unless you join me in each cue, because then you can get your body to wake up. And at the end, like I said, we'll do 3 main cues with 3 major Pilates exercises that are taught all over the world. With those 3 cues and how to apply them. Yeah, and a quick shout out. So I've been teaching Pilates since 2004. And most of these cues I've gathered over the years from different even practices, whether it's fitness or yoga, but 4 main people and organizations stand out in my mind when it comes to the major cues that I find the most beneficial. And first, Michelle Larson, Core Dynamics, my first Pilates certification. A lot of this is from you. Bob Leakins, and the whole old school Power Pilates team. Powerhouse, Midline, Hugging the Midline, all of that stuff is from you. Power Pilates is phenomenal at getting you to teach efficiently and succinctly, as long as there's not really too many issues going on. That's what we're going to hit at the end of the workout today. Rebecca Leone, Fiery Brilliance. She taught me a lot about spine safety and how to keep the spine safe in Pilates, which can be a challenge at times. Shrink wrap, panini press, that's all her, man. Brilliant. And then finally, my husband, who used to teach gymnastics and has given me a tip here and there over time. So yeah, thank you all. You've made me the teacher I am today. So let's get to it. So I am going to reference notes because I get excited, like I said, and love what I teach and then get lost in what I'm trying to teach you. So the very first one is actually the only one I'm going to teach you that I don't want you doing often in mat class, which is tucking the pelvis. Actually, I wanted to show you sitting first. So tucking the pelvis, what I use as tucking the pelvis as a cue in class is this. The pelvis tucks under, okay, kind of creates a C curve in your spine, but the pelvis moves almost behind the leg bones, okay? So, you know, most of us kind of sit like this anyways. We don't want to encourage that with exercise, but it is a cue I use in teaching to help you understand the difference of where your pelvis can be, okay? So tucking the pelvis is an active or kind of passive movement of your pelvis tilting this way. So that's what it looks like sitting, you know. Lying down looks like this. Whoop. Okay, so that would be flattening the low back. Okay, that's another cue I would use. You're trying to flatten the low back, but essentially you're tucking the pelvis under. And you'll see this in downward facing dog in yoga. You know, if we have tight hamstrings, we tuck naturally because the hamstrings are so tight. Often teachers will come around, you know, soften the knees, lengthen the tailbone back. Do you see that? So that's you lengthening your low back. We don't often do that in Pilates, but we often do this pose, right? So tucking the pelvis here looks like that. Not a full spine round. There's a lot of bones in your spine. We're not moving them all with a tucking pelvis. We're just moving the pelvis under, okay? And then we often go the other way, but I want you to understand tucking the pelvis first because I want you to be able to see what lifting out of your pelvis looks like, okay? So we'll start sitting again. So if we're tucking, that's a no-no because we're loading our low back, where all of our body weight from whatever point we're bending at is loading that vertebral joint. We don't want to load our low backs. We want to load our pelvic bones. They're massive and strong and awesome. We often get osteoporosis there. Why? Because they haven't been loaded our whole lives. We've been loading our low backs. We have to load these bones. It keeps our back safe and it builds bone density, okay? So here we are tucking. The cue I use often is to lengthen or lift out of your pelvis. I'll also use cues like lift from the basement of your pelvis to your first floor, which is the first floor of the spine, like L5. So those are the cues I'll use in class to get you to get out of your pelvis. You'll notice it looks like you're untucking, okay? So here's us tucking, here's us lifting and lengthening out of the pelvis. Now, depending on your hip flexibility, you'll be able to lift a lot, or maybe not at all. You'll try and you'll go, oh my God, my hips are on fire. That's when you put yourself in a chair, okay? Or you do this exercise lying down, which I'll show you how to do in a few moments, okay? So we do this lifting out of the pelvis as best we can, okay? Once you have that concept, then we start layering on cues like panini pressing. Now, panini pressing, again, I learned from Rebecca Leone, is to imagine a panini press machine, which makes a sandwich, right? Now it takes two pieces of bread and it pulls those two pieces of bread together. If one side of your panini press machine is working and the other is broken, you end up, your sandwich like pops out the back, okay? No, we need a panini press machine that's in full working order where you pull the muscles, you pull your bread per se towards each other. So there's this extra lift. Not only are you lifting, but you're supporting your lift. So if I think of a panini press machine going around my lumbar vertebra, 5 to 6 vertebrae at the base of your spine, you've lifted out of your pelvis, and then you've panini pressed. Now you've engaged muscles to support and hold that lift out of the pelvis, okay? So some of us have an easy time lifting, but the minute we get into exercise or move the legs, we're back to here. So that's why we add the panini press cueing to get you to keep that part of your body from moving. So you become very stable and strong, and that is hardcore deep ab work, okay? So that's what it looks like sitting, okay? So we've untucked or we've lifted out of our pelvis. Then we've panini pressed. You'll feel your abs pull in and you'll feel your back lift even more, okay? That's what it looks like in this position. Then we can look at it in cat-cow, and I'm gonna tuck my shirt in so you can see. Okay, so this would be me tucked. This is me lengthening out of my pelvis. And this is me panini pressing. You see it? I didn't do that. That's one side of the panini press machine working. This is it, right? Abs relaxed, abs engaged, okay? So that's panini press. Panini press on the mat can be the most confusing because we just find such refuge and false support by flattening our low back. But again, the panini press machine has to work on both sides. So you can put a hand under your low back, to remind you, you need space there. Let me do it this way, actually. And then you exhale, panini press. Okay? That's a tuck. That's not working. That's not what we're looking for. Lengthen out of the pelvis, panini press. Now you're stable. Now you can do some work, okay? So how did I progress to the next? Okay, so the next cue I use like 27 different cues for, which is simply a corseting of the ribs, shrink wrapping of the ribs, melting the ribs towards the floor, softening the low ribs. All of those cues mean one thing, which is to gently pull the rib bones towards each other. Shrink wrap seems to be very efficient and effective for my clients. Most of the students like shrink wrap. But sometimes they can't grasp that. So think of just the ribs and the lowest ribs melting or softening, okay? Now make sure when that's happening, it might be tough to grasp this. This takes time, but what I'm trying to say is when you melt the ribs, often the body goes, oh yeah, I'm melting the ribs. It's easier to soften here if you tuck, but we're trying to build strength here. So you need to lengthen through the pelvis, panini press, and then shrink wrap, okay? And I want to see here how I progressed this when I was thinking about it. Okay, so in order for you not to tuck here, when you melt your ribs or corset or shrink wrap, you have to anchor your sit bones or anchor your sacrum, okay? So your sacrum is this crabby looking bone. It looks literally like this at the very bottom of your spine, below your lumbar. So if the back of this sacrum is anchored to the floor, it means your pelvis is anchored, and therefore you can do your lifting out of your pelvis, your panini pressing, and your shrink wrapping and melting without the pelvis changing shape. In class, I often show, like, if you're tucking, you're building this posture, right? Do you want this kind of posture in your everyday life? No, you want to be way up here. So all we're trying to do is, one, teach you how to get your spine there, and then two, strengthen around it so that everyday life isn't affecting you and causing you to drop. Or your exercise regime is not causing you to tuck. You want length, okay? So we're in here, we've layered some cues. We lengthen out of our pelvis. We panini press to stabilize. We shrink wrap and corset to deepen the stabilization of our spine. And so we don't tuck, we anchor our sacrum. So now this all feels tractioned. That's a cue I use, but you're tractioning everything. So all these muscles are starting to work so that when you start to add things like lifting the head, we're going to get to in a hot second, or lifting the leg, this is not affected. You know, you start to be able to just move all over the place. And guess what? This doesn't go anywhere. Takes a while, takes practice, and you have to keep practicing. I want to make sure you know how to practice correctly, okay? So you've got your length, at least in the lower back, okay? Panini press, shrink wrap, anchor in the sacrum. Once all that's there, you actually start to undo neck tension, which is awesome, right? There's a golden ticket for like half of my students. How do I get the tension of Pilates out of my neck? Well, this all has to be stable for this to even have a chance. So everything's here. Then we do an exercise called head floats in class. Sometimes, you know, we just float up. If you are having neck pain, something, either we have to build up strength there or something's given. You might be tucking a little. Whatever it is, the tension is building there because the stability is not here. Okay, so we anchor, panini press, shrink wrap. We float. And then all of a sudden, it's like the weight of the head starts to be supported by all of this. Now, this takes some time to get used to. So in the meantime, I teach like hammocking the head or supporting the head, in which case the hands go behind the head. I'm going to sit up to show you this because often when I teach this initially, everyone goes to where we used to learn it in fitness, like fingertips. Now, fingertips for the head was taught because a lot of us would do sit-ups old school fitness style and pull on our heads. So we started thinking, okay, well, we don't want people to pull on their heads. So let's just do fingertips. And then they don't pull on their heads. Well, guess what? That still can cause a little bit of neck pain because you're essentially not supporting your head as much as you could with a bit of oppositional work. So what I want you to do when you practice this is your hands stack, not fingertips, the entire hand. And the palm of your hand is going to go right to the biggest part of your skull so that you're pressing your head back into your hand. Now you might already see, watch what happens to my body. My only cue that I gave myself there was to push the weight of my skull into the palm of my hand. And you saw it, there's natural lift there, okay? So when we do it on the floor, you're creating opposition or resistance in your own body. So you do all your stuff down here, and you start to lift your head and shoulders off the floor. And I often teach it with the arms to the ceiling, okay? So you do this, if you start to feel tension in the neck, we stack our hands, like training wheels. I also use that cue. And it's not this. It's the opposite. You're actually lengthening your neck, pressing your head gently into the palm of your hands. Again, all of this has to be here so that your neck isn't yelling at you. But that takes practice. So we need to support our head when we need. So you're gently pressing your head back to open your throat. And you're actually gently pulling your hands into your head so that there's some resistance going there that's supportive. Okay, it's just positive resistance. That's how you build strength. Okay, so the hands go there and you're pressing back. And in class, I'll coach you if you feel good, remove the hands, see how many reps you can do without supporting your head. But that's how you're supporting your head when you're supporting your head in my class. Okay, it helps you create length. Now, along with that comes kind of the final stages of length. So we've talked about lifting and lengthening out of the low back, out of the pelvis. Now there's the lengthening of the rest of the body. So think of lengthening. There's 100 cues for this too, but the crown of the head to the ceiling, the dome of the skull inflating to the ceiling, magnetizing your brain to the ceiling, puppet strings, lengthen all the sides of the neck. I've cued it from here too. Like imagine you have a neck brace or a turtleneck. Like there's all these things to get you lengthening through the rest of your spine. Whatever it is that gets the inside of your skull to float this way. You can think of pressing down in your sits bones to lengthen, which is our next cue. But basically that's the length that you saw here happen gently with the press back, but then I add the puppet string or the magnet to the ceiling and there's a little more lift, and I actually feel that lift here, which is what's so cool. It's all connected. So when you're on your mat, it's a little tougher to feel length because gravity's underneath us, so we're not working against it. We need resistance to work our muscles. In this position, it's not there, so it's harder to find, believe it or not. So, if we're doing this thing like floating up, again, we've got all this stuff going on. And then, you can think of fingertips a way to lengthen the top of the head away from the fingertips, or top of the head away from the heels. If you need support, that's fine as well, but think of lengthening the neck because it will feel like a crunch otherwise. This will all be crunching unless you find length, okay? So whatever cue clicks for you, doming the head, magnetized to the ceiling, puppet string, whatever, but there's that length of the neck, length of the spine that gets you up and out of your pelvis even more, okay? Now here's where we start a little more of this concept of opposition, okay? So in here you felt opposition because your head was pressing back, but you're actually trying to lift. There's some opposition there, okay? This next one is a pressing down to go up, okay? I did it just there with my hands, like press my arms down to lengthen my neck, okay? I'll start sitting with this. So in yoga, you'll hear this a lot. Root down to fly or root to go up. It's Pilates too. We root our sits bones to lengthen, okay? So this is, guess what? Looks an awful lot like lifting out of the pelvis. It's just the other side of the movement, right? So you can lift this way, or you can root your sits bones, which are, sorry for the visual, but like right here, okay? So they're the body, you can feel them underneath the meat of your bum. They're these bony protrusions that are meant to go down. They're not meant to be sat behind. Our body weight needs to rest on our sits bones. So you press your sits bones down to go up, okay? In mat class, we're not often sitting. We have a few exercises, but we're mostly lying down to alleviate gravity's pull on the spine. That's why we do a lot of the work we do on the mat, in case you didn't know that, okay? We want to have gravity behind us to help us undo a lot of our, whether you want to get as extreme as calling it scoliosis or some of our kinks, you know? That's why we work on our backs. So in this posture, pressing down to go up is technically pressing your heels away to grow this way, okay? So heels go long and the head goes in opposition. Tough to feel until we layer in our cue, plugging the shoulders, okay? Or pulling the shoulder blades to the back pockets. You'll hear me say that a ton. Now what this is meant to do is shoulder blades moving away from the ears, also a cue I use, but it's meant to pull the shoulder blades away from the ears, okay? So as you're pressing your feet, it actually helps to do this into a wall. I'm kind of off screen if I do this, but press your heels into a wall and you'll feel what I'm talking about. Give your body tactile feedback when I'm not there to come around and put my hand on your heels so that you feel what I'm talking about. Press your heels into the wall. Press your arms by your side to feel the shoulder blades moving away from the ears. And then the crown of the head is now, guess what? Doming or lengthening that way, okay? What this looks like, what plugging the shoulders looks like, it can mean two things. In this case, it's pulling the shoulder blades down towards the back pockets so that your neck technically gets longer, you know? Vroom. Or if you're more advanced, once you've mastered or at least grasped panini pressing and shrink wrapping, plugging the shoulder blades means doing this. Now, why I don't cue that initially, and why most instructors, if they've been taught in the lineage of Power Pilates in particular, don't teach plugging the shoulder blades right away, is because we haven't gained control of our core. So watch what happens if I haven't done my work here. Imagine me lying on the floor. Okay, you'll just see it better if I do it here. Oh, yes, I plugged my shoulder blades back. Now I've got beautiful posture. Well, no, sorry, not quite. Because why? I just jutted my ribs forward to make this happen. A lot of us are tight in our shoulders and we have not enough strength in our core to anchor first before layering the shoulder blades second. So in Power Pilates, this area is called the secondary powerhouse because it layers on top of the primary powerhouse, which is this lifting and panini pressing and shrink wrapping. So we do all of this work to get every student out there, including you, aware of this area of their body. Okay, now I've got this. Guess what? Now you are ready to layer the shoulder blades on top. And then when you get to that stage, you really start to open the shoulders. A lot of the time in Pilates, it's a very tough area to get to in a class setting because we're constantly working here. And very rarely do we get here authentically. We do because the teacher asks us, but we're not quite there yet to where the ribs are held into place and we've plugged. So again, plugging the shoulder blades has two meanings. One is more beginner. We're plugging the shoulder blades down our back to lengthen. Or when we're more advanced, everything's stabilized here and we draw the arm bones in their sockets or we plug the shoulder blades. Synonymous terms, believe it or not, okay? I think that is our last. We have two more before we get to the advanced, putting all of these together, right? Because this video is what, like 20 minutes long already. I'm going to wrap it up in 3 cues at the end. Hold out. It's going to be worth it. Okay. So the next one is in class, I fold up a cloth and I call that cloth squidgy. Years and years I've been calling this thing squidgy. So quite a few of you will know what I'm talking about. For those of you who don't, I fold this cloth up and I place it sometimes between the heels, sometimes between the knees. Sometimes we work with a magic circle, but all of these cues are getting us to do what's called hug the midline. So the heels are hugging, the knees are hugging. It's basically bringing everything, you turn this way, towards our center line this way. The line that splits us from left to right. Our spine line, our midline. So in Pilates, we are essentially pulling everything towards our center. You will watch what happens to my body when I do that. I hug my midline. Guess what we get more of? Lift, length. You cannot, or rather, I don't want you to get strong without length, because strength without length creates bulkiness and closed offness. We want the length of a yogi and the strength of a bodybuilder, which in essence gives you the body of a dancer, right? So hugging the midline or squeezing squidgy or hugging the knees towards each other, hugging the shoulder blades towards each other, it is all leading up to one of the advanced cues, which is hug the midline, which does a lot in one cue, right? Just pulls everything together. Wrapping the thighs. Yes, I wrote that down because I often forget that one. But this cue comes in more in the equipment training when we're on the reformer. But there is this essence of wrapping the thighs. When you wrap your thighs or turn out per se, not crazy ballerina turnout, but just the subtle wrapping of the thighs, you muscularly support your bum, which muscularly supports the lifting out of the low back. If you have weak glutes and tight hips, usually it's kind of like a little bit more of a flat bum physique, and lifting out of the low back is very difficult. So when you learn to wrap your thighs, you start to open the hips and lift out of your low back, which is a beautiful freedom for this whole area. So that cue will come up as wrapping the thighs, hugging squidgy. We start Pilates often with like a Pilates V, you know, fist distance apart. That's all to get you not just turning your feet out, but wrapping here. Try it. Parallel feet, slouch. And then take your hands and just wrap the thighs. It's kind of like a reverse shrink wrap. You know, you're shrink wrapping this way, but then with the legs, you're shrink wrapping this way. Beautiful. Wow, my posture looks interesting on Zoom this way, right? Like my legs look like 1,000,000 miles long. And my feet look really big. Okay, so the very last one, C-curving in Pilates. Now, C-curving is taught initially in Pilates to help you find your core. Because most of us, if we have tight low backs, we walk around either like this, you know, and when we sit, we slouch. C-curve is taught to get you to, you know, find your abs in all of these exercises, like roll backs, roll ups, you know, we're C-curving a lot. For your spine to be safe and for you to build strength rather than an unstable spine. C-curve comes a little later in my classes in that I want you to learn to lift first. And then C-curving comes at a different part in the spine. You're not C-curving by tucking, despite it looking like a C. This just loads your low back. I want you to be able to stay lifted and then C-curve or hollow out the abs. That's that gymnast cue, right? Hollow out the abs. Then guess what? Once you do that, try plugging your shoulder blades. Oh my gosh. Once you start to get muscular engagement you never knew you had, that simple plugging of the shoulders deepens your oblique work. You know, if I'm here, let me try from this side. I'm trying to give you the best angle here, but right, so you're lifted. This stabilizes. You maintain this lift all the way through your spine. Keep lifting out of your spine, hinge back, and then just hollow out here. It's not a big C, I know, but you'll feel like you're a C because this area is screaming at you because it's working so hard, okay? So C-curves in my class are not as deliberate as old school classical Pilates because I want you to keep your low back safe. It's an evolution in my own teaching that I'm bringing you along with for the ride because it's safe for you. It's how you get strong. Okay, so C-curve, I use it sometimes for exercises like rolling like a ball, but I still want that lower back lifted. Okay, so on the mat, what this looks like is stable. Everything's panini press. You can straighten your legs to help even, right? Got all the cues, reaching through the heels, shrink wrap, soften, and do a head float. This is what a C-curve in my class looks like. I'm not doing this. That's insane. Not good for you. Don't do it anymore. If this bothers your neck, just know you have your hands to support while you lengthen and draw the shoulder blades to your back pockets, right? And then you can lower and release. All right, the creme de la creme moment. So again, this beginning phase of the exercise video today is reference. Come back to it, visit it. It might be boring to you, but guess what? It will teach you every time something you might not have felt in your body before, okay? These last 3 cues are designed to encompass about 6 of the cues that I already taught you, okay? The cues I'll use are hug the midline, which you got a glimpse of, use your powerhouse or lift from the powerhouse. And then the last one is press to lengthen or root to lengthen, which again is often used in yoga, sometimes more than Pilates, okay? So we're gonna do 3 exercises, 100, leg circles, and spine stretch forward, okay? And what I'll do is show you what each cue looks like, and then we'll go into it, okay? So for 100, we start by using the powerhouse to lift. Everything, okay? I'm gonna show you an advanced posture. Okay, starting with the 100, use your powerhouse to lift. Inhaling for 5 and exhaling for 5, right? So this is the part of the video that's for you who know what the 100 is. I'm using my powerhouse to lift me. Now what my powerhouse involves is the panini press, the lengthening out of my low back, the shrink wrapping of my core, okay? Now press to lengthen as you're pumping. So this is now lengthening the feet away from the crown of the head while lengthening the neck. And the fingertips are lengthening away from my ears. And then finally hugging the midline, pressing the heels into each other, drawing the shoulder blades back, and deepening the ribs. Bend the knees in and release. There you go. Eventually it'll just be use your powerhouse to lift, hug the midline, lengthen, press to lengthen. All of those things will get you to feel what usually takes 10 cues to get, right? So leg circles, next. Use your powerhouse to lift your right leg. Good. We circle across, down, around, and pull from the powerhouse to lift the leg. So again, that powerhouse cue is a panini press, a shrink wrap, anchoring of the sacrum, right? Softening of the ribs. Press to lengthen is pushing through that left heel as you lengthen through the top of the head. Now reverse. You circle around, down, deepen, and up. What's tough length here is getting the sits bone of the right leg to lengthen away from the crown of the head. Out, down, and I'm hugging the midline with my left leg. Down, deepen, and pull up. Lower that leg. Use your powerhouse to lift your left leg, right? And the length, press to lengthen. I circle, I act like I'm pushing into resistance to create length, not only in my leg, which needs it, you can see it. I'm pressing through my right foot a little bit into the ground and away from me to create length in my spine. I'm doming my head back. But all of that's under the cue of press to lengthen. Lengthen the shoulders, lengthen the neck. One more. Good. Deepen. And now change direction. Now we're hugging the midline with the leg that's moving as it comes center. And we're hugging the midline with the right leg hugging towards the midline. Our arms are hugging the midline, right? And our ribs are hugging the midline. Last one. Deepen and pull up. Doing my best not to move my pelvis. It's very tough. Okay. And then reach those arms. You can lift yourself all the way up with the support of your hands. And then finally, spine stretch. All right. So I keep reiterating this, but I want you to understand that eventually the cues in my class will be basically like, press to lengthen, deepen the powerhouse to move forward, and then hugging the midline, which involves the legs kind of hugging towards each other and the ribs shrink wrapping towards each other, right? And then we stack our spines up. Exhale, deepen. So you're technically C-curving while lifting, but you're using your powerhouse to move. You're hugging the midline and pressing to lengthen, stacking the spine. And then one final time, press to lengthen, deepen in the powerhouse, and lengthen forward as you hug your midline. And then stack your spine and release. Just those 3 exercises, right? I don't know, I felt them. I hope you did too. But no, I'm not gonna leave you hanging. If I see that your body needs a specific cue, I'll give it. And again, using just 3 cues is a very advanced practice. At the same time, it helps beginners not get lost in all the hubbub of the cues, okay? So there's this usage of your center, there's this length that's important, and then there's this pulling towards your midline. That really, in essence, is all Pilates is. I joke and say, it's kind of boring. You realize you're only doing 3 things all the time. We just changed the choreography around it, but really you're stabilizing, you're lengthening, and you're getting stronger. That's it. Not a bad way to be boring though, you know? And then, you know, what we can start to change the choreography. Once you understand what the basic exercises are, which over time you will, and you start to understand the cueing, then we get very creative and we can add all sorts of things. But until then, stick with the beginner intermediate workouts that you know and love and feel great in your body, and use this as a reference to help you with anything that's not quite clicking in your body, okay? And yeah, give me feedback. Anything I missed? I know we didn't go through like imprinting and breathing, but those are more movements rather than cues. So maybe we'll do those next time. In the meantime, I hope you appreciate this and enjoy your workouts. Otherwise, pick one of the other ones to do this week, and I will see you next Monday. Okay, thanks. Bye.